we're going to have a nice conversation. There's a lot to talk about. There's so much to look at. So, I think just to kind of get everyone warmed up, I think it'd be nice to hear from each of you. This is such a challenging thing to say with artists, but briefly about your work. I would like to hear a little bit about both your processes, like how you work, and then also the origins of what we're seeing here. Like, where did those ideas sort of start for you? So, processes and origins, I think we'll start there. And would anyone like to start? If not, I'll choose Joy. But, okay, because you're at the end and the microphone can move easily from there.
I have the florals over in the corner. Just to give you, a very brief history, I grew up loving art, doing art, painting mostly. I didn't like to draw. I loved to paint, use a brush, but I never thought of it career-wise. I just did it in little ways, paint by numbers, model airplanes, Christmas ornaments, cross-stitch, everything. All through my life, through my adult decades, I went off, did work, never really found anything that fit well, moved all over the place, lots of jobs. And then in about early 20-teens, I started taking art classes and at CC downtown, and then I was there about 3 years, one class a semester as my job allowed time-wise, and I just couldn't believe it. Being in a classroom, working at an easel, I just loved what I was doing. I went in exhausted and weary and came out 3-4 hours later just totally rejuvenated. And so I ended up transferring over to Grand Valley, got a fine arts degree, learned a lot of the business side of art, some technique. I studied illustration, and then 2015, boom, I was off on my own, and how do I do all this? So no idea. I really hadn't, in my opinion, honed my skills. I just kind of was working on the edges, and I didn't feel like an artist. So 2020 hit, I had a lot of time, I did a lot of research online, and I found the atelier movement. Atelier is French for in the studio. I could talk about it for hours, I won't. And it's a form of training in art that teaches technique at a very deep level. It's how they trained in the academies in France during the Renaissance. So it breaks down, basically it's built on proportions and turning form or shading. You spend years learning, if you're able, and it's just a very in-depth form of study. It hones your eye to see really well, and your technique with your materials and your sense of patience, and on many levels. So after about 3 years of that, I took a sabbatical in a way from painting, put my brushes down, and decided I needed to learn how to draw. I had heard a good painter is a good drawer, and it was time. So I spent 3 years learning to draw. Then I branched into painting, mostly in oils. I've done watercolor, but right now I work mostly in oils for paint and charcoal and chalk for drawing, with a few other mediums that I throw in, as needed. But learning how to draw is what really opened everything up for me. Gave me a lot of confidence. It was very difficult. It was like learning anything in depth. It took a lot of practice, a lot of time, a lot of facing your failure. And I'll still learn. I'll continue to learn for the rest of my life. But that body of work is kind of built on that. Honing the drawing skills, working on painting, looking at value structure, light and shadow, and just a bunch of things that we could get into or not. But I also do a lot of still life. I prefer to work from life. Some of those are still from photographs because florals, I'm kind of trying to translate that into working more from life, but you have the aspect of everything, or most florals can go pretty quickly. So I'm still trying to figure that out as I go, and but what you see there is a little bit of both, from life and from photographs, and small, large, dry, medium, paint. Yeah, just a collection. So
wonderful, great to hear. Mary Jane, do you have this in common? Are you someone who turned to art, this visual art, later in life, or has it always been a part of you? Because I know you as like having a long performing arts career, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I started. So my father wanted to be a full-time artist, realized he couldn't afford to raise a family on that, so became a surgeon. Well, he had been a butcher beforehand, so he had a lot of practice.
Oh, God.
But anyway, he drew and continues to draw at 96, draw and paint every single day of his life. So it was always around our house, and that's always what we did. And then I was an art major, English major, dual major in college. And, but was under the impression you could never make a living as an artist. Somebody tells you that, don't believe it, just keep trying. So I became a teacher because it's fun to write on the board. And I did that for years, and then I didn't want to go into administration. I was teaching art and English at the time, and I started improvising. And as an Air Force brat, I had, who hated change, we moved constantly. I always was having to make new friends, and I realized that improvisation was really sort of my calling, and it really covered all the arts for me. So improvisation is comedy improv, but it's also just taking whatever is at hand, which is what my father always said. It's like, it doesn't matter what tools are around, use whatever you have. Don't use that as an excuse to not do your work. So I started improvising, then I did that full-time at Second City for a couple years, Second City in Detroit. And then from there, I didn't want to move to New York or LA for various reasons, so I stayed here, and I told them, you're in major markets, Second City was, and how about doing something in minor markets? They didn't really see that as an option, and I said, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to try. So I started Fish Ladder, my company that uses applied improvisation with companies, teaching them to think on their feet, be more innovative, and started that in 1999, and I did make a living using that, and I continued to then use those skills in my visual art and in my painting, because every time you make a mark on a canvas, you're giving yourself a problem, just like any time you get a suggestion from an audience member, and now what will you do with that? And it's just different mediums is how I see it. So that's really helped loosen me up with my work. And I would say the other thing about my process is I do love to start with either an idea, conception, something that interests me, like when I read about the fact that if you're in or near water, your blood pressure goes down. And I thought that's fascinating. How can I take a two-dimensional surface and get somebody to experience that without just painting a lake or a river? Is there a way to suggest that so somebody can interact with it? And then sometimes it's just the materials, and something seems fun, and I want to play with how edges work. And so it's, I think, as you've said, being rooted in the disciplines of drawing and having taken a lot of classes and so on, that's really helpful for them to let you just play. So for me, it's also just fun and difficult at the same time, and then you get back to the fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is bedazzled. Did you know that?
Okay, hi. As Zachary introduced me, I'm Merima Smajlović and Janet, yes. And not too long here. I'm like 6 years in America, and before that I live in Germany and in Bosnia, and I finished Academy of Art. I work like marketing manager, like lead graphic designer for 11 years. I was involved with art from my 12 When I was 12, I go in a school of art, then start war in Sarajevo. I'm from capital city of Bosnia. And then I was refugee in Germany. And after that, I go back to Bosnia, finish Academy of Art, work like artists, try with all my friends to build something there after war. And it was like almost the golden age, because in that period we had money from whole European Union, everybody. After that, it's always go down. Yeah. And yeah, then I figured out nobody can live from art in our country. Today is a little bit different because of internet and whole connection in the whole world. And yeah, I start to work. I try to find some job and have money. And that was what I did for a long time, like more than 20 years, but I was always connected with art, with every part of art. And then, in one point of my life, I came here. I think always I will go to Germany again, but no, my destiny bring me here. And I think, okay, great, here will be easier, and I want to be a full-time artist. And yes, which I am. I didn't speak English 6 years ago. And thank you if I don't speak so good, that's okay. Yeah, and then I started to paint here. I almost hated my country when I came here. And because of everything what's happened, I want to cry now. And then when I came, my country is really old country. And I want to share with everybody history of Bosnian. On that part of the world, Balkan is huge, have so huge history. People don't know about so many things. We have a letter, 10th century old letter called Bosančica, when was just Bosnia and Dubrovnik Republic. And that letter is almost on all my paintings. We have the same symbols, so many symbols. And they are a little bit covered in every of my painting. In Croatia, because that was one country, and I feel that country like my country whole. Bosnia, Serbia, Slovenia, that's all my countries. In Croatia, women in the Ottoman world, women from Croatia protect herself with a tattoo. And I put that tattoo on my painting, same, because like protection for myself, because I need to be protected here from everything what comes, what came to me. But yeah, and I fight always. And I go out 3 years after I came here. I figured out I paint. I have my first exhibition in Luddington with 40 pieces, because I figured out I need to do something, and they are amazing. In Luddington, they have a art center, and that people are great. And after that exhibit, that was my first series here. Connect totally with my Bosnian roots, everything what that represent. And then after that, I start to paint. I tell myself, I need to go out. I need to show this painting somebody. I need to show my art. And I go to the festival. Okay. This festival.
Art Prize.
Art Prize. Thank you. To Art Prize, and I apply with some painting. I am an artist. I introduced myself there, and then I met Mary Jane, I met so many people, everybody. Zachary, really everybody from Grand Rapids who are involved in art. And because I'm not ashamed to talk, I love to talk. It's just the way I talk. It's not so, I don't have so many English words. I don't know so many English words. I learn still. But yeah, I don't have a fear from talking. And yes, and that was my beginning, really my beginning here. Then I start to paint more abstract art because I figured it out with abstraction. I love abstract art. I love express myself through color, through my expression, to my movement, to everything what I put from inside out on my painting. And that was I love abstract. I have that freedom. And big canvas, I love big canvas, same, because I have that freedom on big canvas to do whatever I want, to put my feeling, to put my emotion, something what is really cover behind my strength, something what is really sensitive and gentle, what I don't show so often. And then sometimes I put something, I just paint with emotion. I construct. And I cannot. I don't have any. I never have something real. I have always one idea, but when I'm in front of the painting, in front of the canvas, I never know what I want to do. I start, and I build, like I don't know how can I express that now, like. I go easy in the canvas, and then I can scratch painting. I can repaint, erase, then again paint. Then I do always so many layers, and on the end, when I see that is the moment, then I feel that I did something what I really want from inside. I stop. And that's it. That's how I made my paintings. And with installation, I love doing installation, but installation is something different. With installation, I want to have my voice. I want to have voice that everybody can hear what I have to say, politically, personal, about humanity, about psychology, about everything what we live. Every of us have something inside of us what we cannot say, and through the art I always can say something, especially with installation and painting. That's two medium which I really love. And then Mary Jane and I, that's the point when what we made here. It's we met during the art prize. We figured out that we love communicate, we love telling the story, she is poet, on my painting I have poetry, then we figured out we can do that together. She read my poetry because I cannot read in English so good. She read amazing that. Then we write together, then we talk together, our poetry in the same time. We build that in really contemporary way. And we love to do that. And that in some point we came to this Dialogue of Souls first exhibition, and the other exhibition after that we came to the Dialogue of Soul, Voices and Colors, because it's everything connect with our souls, our emotion, empathy, to other people, not to between just between us. It's like more psychology what we did there with our installation art and our collaboration. It's more about our migration. We both migrate. We both left I left country, your family left country and came here and struggle with everything, fight with everything in a new country, to build new life, to raise the kids, to learn other language, to be accept. It's really something what we fight. I fight for that. To be accept with what I'm doing, what I want to do, what I want to be here, why am I here? And yeah, that's yeah. And I show, I think, everything to my art, but not like a surface. You cannot see that immediately. You need to sit there. You need to look through through the.
Merima, the surface question is a
Sorry.
question. I have a surface question coming up, so
sorry, I
don't
love to talk.
keep
That's-
that part until, because I want to hear about it. But
Thank you.
I got a smooth transition into
Sorry.
that.
Okay, I love to talk.
I should say, for Monica, I think I'm probably blocking it, but we do have her piece just behind us. So hers is maybe, I'm going to stand over here. But you have sort of a visual aid as Monica speaks. So, and then I've got some deeper questions after this last intro.
Okay, so I'm the thing between us and getting deep. Okay. I started sewing when I was 5. My mother had a strong belief in my ability not to hurt myself, and so she would show me basically what you do and then leave the room and said on her way out the door, call me when you get to the zipper. And so she left her 5-year-old daughter with the sewing machine to get on as she would. And I, early on, got very interested in costuming and made a lot of costumes for my siblings. Sometimes before they got home from school, I'd be home with a cold, and by the time they got home, a pink Sears ripcord bedspread would have turned into a princess dress that weighed about 7 pounds. And some of you had those Sears ripcord bedspreads, I can tell. And so I went on doing that kind of thing, sewing for myself. I'm quite tall, so it's always a good skill to have. And then as I went to college, I started making a little money on the side with the sewing, doing custom camera bags for a guy who did nature photography in Central America and had very specific things he wanted out of these camera bags. And so I realized that, there were a lot of interesting construction problems that I really liked working through. It was like the harder, the better. Have I done this before? Oh, okay, maybe there's something else in the Vogue section that'll be really hard, and I can try that. So I always liked that sort of thing. I went on in completely separate field to art, though. My doctorate is in rhetoric, and when I finished up in Berkeley, I went to my first tenure track job in Baltimore and didn't do a whole lot of sewing till just sort of the end of my time there, when I costumed some plays that were going on downtown. They were all drag shows, and that has really interesting challenges. Men break dresses. The spaghetti straps just, go. And so you were constantly repairing and everything. They're like too strong for the dress or something. So it was really interesting kinds of things that I was doing. And then just as that play was ending, actually, I immigrated to Australia. My husband here in the front row was the inspiration for that move, and so I lived there for 12 years, and I was sewing for myself, and then decided to take a professional costuming certificate program that they have there at their technical college. It's called TAFE, and in costume manufacture. So I was making lots of corsets and doing all sorts of things like that. And then I was pregnant with my son at the time, who's sitting here now, and realized that trying to do full-time work and in a sort of communications sort of role, and be pregnant and try to do this very full-on costuming program wasn't working out. So I don't tend to drop out of things, but I did decide that before I got the chance to wrestle 40 yards of tulle into a tutu, I was just going to have to forgo that experience and find something that was a little more family-friendly. So I went and took a class at the rec center on quilting. And if you've ever experienced addiction, you'll understand that sometimes, this little tiny start, grows into something that takes over your house. And I really loved it, and then quickly fell in with the local guild in Sydney, which is enormous. There's 1,000 members and has its own office in an office building downtown, and they're really a serious group. fell in with their art quilters and started doing that side of quilting, along with traditional quilting also. But I was really enjoying that a great deal and finding that in some ways there were links to the rhetoric, that it's sort of another kind of communication. And you can seek in it another sort of eloquence. And it's sort of a metaphoric way of looking at things and space in the real world, and as opposed to just the words. Although you can incorporate those too. So time passed. I came back. I was recruited by GVSU. I'm emerita from GVSU, so we have a lot of GVSU connections here. And while I was working there, I was able to take some courses from the art department along the way, but mostly I learned through the ways that quilters tend to learn, from one another, in classes, from guilds, that sort of way. But because I'm an academic, I also was reading a lot of art history on the side and that kind of thing. So there's sort of a self-taught on the more scholastic side of things. The Studio Art Quilt Associates group is a wonderful international group that some of my friends from Australia are members of, people here are members of, Sue in the back row is a member of, and we get a lot of support in pursuing this lark of art quilting. And so this show here is the product of 3 states, because people have state affiliations as well as the sort of overall SAQA affiliation. The 3 states came together and came up with this idea that we would explore the toxic Scheele's green pigment that mostly in the 19th century was extremely popular because it was such a brilliant green that people had been looking for, one that didn't immediately turn sort of blackish on you and all of that. And it became extremely popular, so people painted their walls with it, and they made wallpaper out of it, and they dyed garments with it. And unfortunately, it releases arsenic. And so women were swooning, and children in rooms painted completely in this green while they were trying to recover from other maladies were dying. So it was really highly toxic, and it took a while for people to catch up to this. And it has, even to this day, some interesting little cultural artifacts that have gone forward. For instance, they even were coloring some food with it, so it was even in some confectionery. I know, it's really scary. And so the Scots to this day don't like green lollies. They kind of have a thing about the green ones. And so, that was rooted in something real. So our show, I just have the one piece in it, but we have, many, many pieces here for you to look at. They all are. We were challenged to just have a little dash of this green to make the viewer come and look for it. And I thought we were going to go a different direction with it, and I bought all of this green fabric. So I still have that. I'll have to make something else with it. But as it turns out, when the call really came out, it was just to have this little touch of green in the pieces. So as you get a chance to look at them all, you can go and see if you can find them. People interpreted that differently. Some of them have larger amounts of green that you could see from a little distance, and other ones you have to get really quite close to find it. So there's a little bit of a Where's Waldo in aspect to the show in some ways. But I think it's a fun kind of call because it allowed you to go a lot of different directions. I went kind of a literary direction and got to explore some of the sort of historical kinds of themes that have come up in my work and other things too. I got to explore the idea of working on something that's a still life that we think of as being very painterly. And we don't tend to see quilts as still lives so much. They exist, but it's not prevalent. And so I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to explore. And yet other people went completely different directions. We've got, Sue Shibori over here. We've got the exploring that idea of the garments being dyed with the green, all kinds of things in nature that have little tiny flashes of green. It's quite a wide array of a way people took it. So I think you'll enjoy having a look at those.
Yeah, I'm noticing things just around me. I'm like, oh, that little green window back there. Yeah, so it's great to see. Well, I have to sort of transition us from poison to beauty. So I'm just going to do that now. This is really thanks to Haley Johnson, our original speaker's research, which she sent me, and like her thoughts around the exhibition. So I can't take the credit for all of these ideas. But as Haley went around the room and thought about, what are some good questions that sort of tie these pieces together, she thought, one of the things she thought about was beauty, and she thinks that, we think of beauty in pretty simple terms, like it's pleasing to the eye, and it deals with harmony, and it's very natural. But Haley thought about beauty as being something deeper. We can think of beauty kind of emotionally and how it pulls on us, and historically, and even something dangerous. So, I think in this exhibit we see, like in Joy's work, we see beauty in the kind of its natural state. I think in other pieces we see beauty sort of like carefully constructed by these artists and like put together in ways. I think we see it in color choices. And we think of, I think in some of the work we can think of beauty as something that like survives conflict or endures displacement. So there's a lot to chew on there. So my question, and I should say any of these questions, like if anyone's like, I don't know what I want to say to that. Like, we don't all have to answer. If you don't want to, you can like skip yourself. But I'm curious, did you always trust beauty as a subject, or have you felt skeptical of it? Kind of how have you formed a relationship with beauty, moving into this work today? So.
Well, before I came here tonight, I was talking about these questions with my wife, and she reminded me I had this, I was an artist in residence up in Bayview. Do you know where that is? With all those elegant homes, and it's right by the water, and everything is stunning. And I got up there and I unpacked, and then I set up my easel outside, and then I walked a little further this way and that way, and I came back to her and I said, everything is way too pretty. I'm very uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. I mean, it was beautiful, but I thought, what can I say about this? Also, I noticed when I was standing there, I was very close to the homes. I couldn't back up very far, and so I also felt like I can't really get a perspective on this. So they had wanted me to do a painting of the place, and I just had to say, I can't. I don't know. I'm sorry. I hope you'll still feed us. Which they did, and I stayed up there, and it was a great experience, but that was really an aha for me. And thinking about the way you set up this question, I mean, for me, beauty is a lot about finding truth. And the genuineness in an experience. And I'm not saying that wasn't, but I just didn't know how to add to what I was seeing there, but to look at something that either others might not see as beautiful, or a painful experience that then created a scar where you're much stronger, or to take the experience and reform it, reshape it, revisualize it into something that can be celebrated or understood in a new way. To me, that is beauty. And whether it's in my writing or in our performing, because we don't do short form improv, we do narrative storytelling on our feet. or in the painting or sculpture or whatever it is, that I think that's very intriguing to me, is how do I take something that either maybe isn't visually appealing on the surface or an experience, and find the beauty in that.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine you looking at a stunning house and being like, it's already there, you know? What am I supposed to do? Yeah.
Yeah, we all love beauty. We are visual types. We are artists, but I don't believe in a pure plastic classic beauty, like without anything behind, like you say, or scarf or something inside. What made us or made something? If it's just about perfect, beautiful picture without any meaning, that's like nothing. Yeah, like you say, that's boring or scared you. Yeah, something like that.
And I also want to say, I've spent a lot of time, just so we're thinking about this differently, I spent a lot of time with Joy's flowers and with your pieces that I've seen over the years, because I've known your work now for a couple of years. And they're so stunning, and I think what you were able to do, at least from me as a viewer, is take me into something that I don't normally get to spend that kind of time and intensity with. And I find them lovely and comforting, and they get me to see my world in a new way. So I so appreciate what you've done, and again, taken a two-dimensional surface, and you've given me a whole world inside of there that is, in a traditional sense, beautiful, but also in a very, I just sense a real respect. You know, I think looking and paying attention is something we don't do enough of, and it's a really important part of the human experience, and I think you allow us to do that.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. That's exactly what I'm hoping people bring to it and experience and see. And I'm trying to process that question because I knew it was coming, and I've been pondering these things for a couple of weeks, ever since we got our email. And I'll just say what's coming to mind, a couple quick points. One is I don't really think of beauty when I approach my art making. It's not like the word. I approach with a sense of good technique, kind of hitting an ideal, because I always have the best artists in my mind, and how would they see this, or how would they do it, or what brush strokes, or what colors, or those decisions. And when I work, mostly usually from a still life, I'm not copying. I'm looking for an expression of what I'm seeing with the light on the forms, or how just their unique properties, something about it that I want to bring out, that I want to accentuate. And I have to, because of that, I have to change things, shift values, just make different decisions. So I think in a way that's reaching toward a certain kind of beauty, or an ideal. While at the same time, I now believe perfection is no longer linked fully with beauty. I used to think that. Now I see beauty as more of it carries a woundedness with it, or a kind of a sense of suffering. And I think you even see that historically through art in a number of ways. And I don't know, that just speaks to that depth that even you were talking about. And yeah, so I guess that's a little bit of what's coming to my mind, along with other things, but I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh boy. I don't think that I go after, the idea of, okay, now I'm going to go out and make this beautiful. I think I come to it and think, all right, can I get close to the thing that's in my mind's eye? And by what means can I get there? And will it still carry any kind of communication to a viewer so that it's not such an interior thing that you're really only talking to yourself? I wouldn't be a very good rhetorician, I guess, if I didn't, want some kind of payoff for the viewer too. I think there are some subjects that lend themselves to trying to approach the beauty of the subject. Other ones, I think it kind of goes by the wayside. I mean, when you look at this in art historical terms, I mean, you can start out with something like Plato's view that you're somehow manifesting something close to the pure forms, and then later people saying, no, it's not that at all, or it does or does not actually, it's not a principle of the thing itself, is beauty in the thing, or is it our perception of it, and all of those sort of arguments that have gone on over the years. And then the sort of modern art's kind of rejection of it as a goal of art. And now even that swing back, it's like, well, it's not the be all and end all, but it's part of it. It's something we do need to consider among other things. And I think maybe that pendulum has swung back to something that is closer to what I think. I think there are times you kind of use beauty to create a certain fascination with a thing for other reasons of the message you'd like to communicate sometimes. It's like, if I can sort of draw them in with this beautiful surface, maybe I can get them to question that beautiful surface. Or so it's a means also. So maybe those are some of the thoughts that have been rattling around since this was posed to us.
Well, I think that's a great segue, because I think thinking about surface and beauty is something that we think of as being like on the surface, or people say beauty is only skin deep or things, and it implies that there's more going on like underneath. And I think we can see this in this work, that like aesthetic concerns, purely visual concerns, are just one part of it, and then there's all sorts of ideas and other things kind of churning below. So I'm curious, for anyone who wants to answer this, what do you feel like lies sort of beneath the surface of your work, or like behind that initial visual experience? Like what's under there?
I could start. If you're an art quilter, you always know that there are things that lie beneath, because they literally do. It isn't a quilt unless you have the layers. And then if you work a little bit in something like applique, you even have another layer or surface design that's applied to that surface. And in a sense, so is painting. I mean, you've got, the whatever your substrate is, and then the paint on top. But with quilters, we're even to the point where that surface is slightly disrupted. It's right where the 2D starts to try to be 3D. And it was one of the things I think was interesting to me about your installation, because in some ways all quilts, because of that, somewhere just leaking into 3D that they are. This is like the extension. If you keep going, with textiles, they become sculptural. But there's always a little aspect of that with art quilts like these. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I answered that question before. Like underneath my painting is our emotion, which are not easy, but not nice. Not just a beautiful emotion. It's like really deep emotional underneath of my painting. Okay, sorry.
I would say mine are a combination. Sometimes it is the emotion, which, depending on then when I come back to it the next day, that may have changed, because you're a different person every minute, and each day something different. And so some get painted over entirely. Some I've started, like the one that's back in the corner there, laying claim. I probably started almost 20 years ago and could not find the right expression, and I kept coming back to it, and then finally found what that painting was supposed to do. And sometimes there are literally very intentional layers that you may or may not see. I did a series when I was my mother's conservator, the last years of her life, and we were ruled by me having to track every single penny and report that to the government and these spreadsheets. So I had, when she died, all these receipts. So then I looked on the back of those receipts, and it was interesting, some of the language there. One was promise to return. Trying to think what the other two. Anyway, I did a series of 3, and it's the receipts. I collected them all that had the same language on each, and if I didn't tell you that they were red, white, and blue, I don't know if you'd see that so obviously, but yes, there's reddish, and then the yellow, or the white actually has a lot of yellowy gold in it, which I thought was fitting, and then the blue. But you do see bits and pieces of the receipts, and I just thought of, here are the agreements, the promises, the contracts each of these stores was making, and whether we spent $1.27 or whatever it was, that we had to track each of those, and how painful it was because she didn't have the money. And so, and had lost her freedom to use money and been such a strong, independent woman. So sometimes the layers are that. And in that one, laying claim, I do have some of the excerpts from, she eventually got a law degree, and from her law books there, and some maps. So sometimes using, the surface to build up what's going on behind.
I forget something to tell about our installation underneath. From our installation, it's so many things. It's like you see just some fabric and weavings and some threads and messages, but whole installation is about migration, resistance, resiliency, surviving war, refugees, how we both care about that and about what's happened now in the world. And what we want to tell everybody with this installation is we survived that, and don't let them win. We want to tell everybody how it's not easy to survive war. I survived 30 years ago. Her parents survived 80 years ago during like World War II. I was in a Bosnian war, and people killed neighbors. Mothers stay without kids, without husbands. Everybody die. Nobody win. Just politics win. Just politicians win. They have a money. They spend money. They spend money between them. They sell the countries. They sell properties. They do that everything to us. And the fabric is gauze, represent healing. Yeah.
Binding a wound.
Yes. Yep. And then
all the dyeing we did.
Yes, we dyeing that with a natural
turmeric and matcha and cabbage and black bean.
And we made that because we wanna represent nature through that fabric, not any
artificial
come on, help me with the...
Man-made die.
Yes.
We do a lot of charades.
That's what is underneath of this installation. It's so deep, connect with the war, and which we both think that we live in that. Everybody of us, we know that we live that life now today. Just you didn't have that experience, and I hope we will not have. I am part of American. I hope I will not have one more war in my life. That's.
You want to?
What came to mind when you asked that was, I guess what amazes me about art is, well, it's a visual language, which I didn't grasp for a long time. And I really saw that with my training, especially in values. We learn in depth how to turn form. And when you turn form in 2 dimensions, you're working from a life object and translating 3 dimensions into 2, or a single plane. And you do that with values, the lightness and the darkness of a color or black and white. It's what conveys roundness, whether it's a very sharp turn, like a 90-degree turn, or a soft sphere. And as I'm learning and training, my eye's developing. I'm not just learning how to draw proportions, I'm learning how to hone my eye to see things better and better and better. And it amazes me, it's kind of the magic of art making for me, is when you do something like I do a brush stroke on a painting, and just changing something or softening an edge or shifting it value-wise will push it back in space or pull it forward. And all of a sudden, it just changes the whole thing. It just, something just clicked. I hit it on the right note, and boom, it works. And that's what, I mean, when you look at art, you often can't see that because I didn't create what I see here of other people's, or if I go to a museum, but I'm looking for those things. I'm wondering those decisions the artist made. What was the struggle in this area, or how did they get that vase like so glowing, and the dimensions and all these questions. It just amazes me now, where years ago when I would go through an art museum, it was just kind of like, I gotta go through an art museum. Now I'm like, the alarms are going off because I get so close and I gotta see it and check it out and all these things. And that's a little bit of what you were saying with entering into that space, spending time with it, reflecting on it, because there are things artists do that a photograph will never be able to capture, and that's what I aim for. I don't care to capture a photorealistic. And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, it looks like a photograph." I'm not offended by that at all. I say that to others too, because it's kind of where our programming is we think of photo first before a painting. But I want paintings that are better than any photograph could ever capture of that object or those objects or that person or that landscape, and that's kind of that beneath the layers. That's what I'm aiming for. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I'm friends with a drawing professor, and I think of when he would complain about his students' drawings, and he said, "You can tell they're drawing from a photo and they're not drawing from a still life." He said, "I can tell the difference." So, yeah, there really is that change that we have to make. I just want to ask a question about time. What is our end time? I was told 7. I've also heard 7:30, and I want to just make sure I'm like in the balance. And then, do I need to save time for questions and questions from the audience? Should I create a cushion?
I think only questions we like.
Yes. Okay. Because then I will continue on. Just want to check in on this as the sub here. Okay, great. I think that another thing that's going on in these pieces, I think, beauty was one thing that Haley saw as like a link, but I think another one that she mentioned and I saw in the notes was time. And I think that works so different ways from thinking about the past and history. I mean, there's historical elements behind me as well in like things that are probably illegal to sell now. And then, but also in like the floral work and thinking of, we've just gone through, I think we're still going through spring. I don't know what it's doing out there, but, you know, the fleeting nature of flowers and like some of the things we're seeing in your works, we probably won't be able to see outside very soon. So I'm curious how you think about time as an element of your work, because I think there's a lot of different angles on it. And we've touched on some of them, but if you have like a different thought than we've heard before, would love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I was definitely trying to capture a kind of 19th century vibe with this one, and then some of the things that are in it are of that time. You're right. You don't go to the drugstore and buy laudanum anymore, thank goodness.
Right.
And
I don't see any iPads in here. I see that, you know, there's a book.
Yeah, no iPads,
yeah.
but a copy of De Quincey's Confessions of an English Opium Eater, and which is a 19th century work, and highly autobiographical. And I also went, I had to go on eBay to even get some of the pieces that I wanted to set up for the still life. And one of the kind of fun time elements of this was that I wanted it to be like you were approaching this table, and at just the moment before you pour the water over the sugar cube into the absinthe, it's waiting there. It's all ready, but it hasn't happened yet. So you're kind of deciding whether to partake. And you're really in a particular instant because a petal is in the process of falling off the poppy and onto down toward the floor, but it's midair at this point. So it's just this like little moment of decision for you, I hope. I had some fun with the process, which is more, I guess, an internal, kind of like a little joke with myself. The setup that I did for this, in my studio, I had the drapery on the wall. I put yardage up there and pinned it and set the table up and took photographs to see if I had achieved the Fibonacci spiral that I wanted. And because I was going to use these really time-honored sort of compositional things and be as 19th century about this as I could. And I took things off because no, wrong color, or the arrangement's not right, and then retake the photos. And then when I started the process of actually making, I was literally taking things from the reel and putting them into the piece. So the blue that was up on the wall is now in the piece. The yellow that was on the table, at one point I had to lift everything and get it out of there so I could use it. And I was trying to decide how to get that interesting texture on the picture, and tried a bunch of things. I found some lace that kind of looked like the texture, and I held it up, don't like it. So I've still got that somewhere. And then finally realized, no, you take a rubbing directly off of it. The absinthe spoon, it has this sort of filigree of perforations on it, the real one. I used it as a stencil. I was literally, pushing the paint through the real absinthe spoon. So the actual objects went from being the subject to being the art. So it's a little internal thing for me, and now you know too.
That's fascinating.
So I'm going to take a little different tact on that. I was walking downtown and I passed one of the murals on one of the buildings, and I saw in the corner, the person had signed it, and then it said something like, "This took 262 hours." And I thought, well, they must have been asked that a lot and had gone back and like, oh, okay. And I remember when I was running my business and I was, I had timesheets and trying to figure out how do I price each experience, because that's what they were. They were workshops, they were coaching and so on. And then somebody said, you cannot do a one-to-one because you devalue what you are offering. You're offering an experience. What is the experience worth? And I think the same is true when you're painting or writing or whatever kind of creative pursuit you're involved in. People want to know, how much time did that take? And it's really not a relevant question, because it could have taken 15 minutes, it could have taken years. What matters is what went into that whole process of creativity. And, you know, a lot of times it appears, but that's because you've been thinking about it and living with it for decades. So I find the interest, you know, the question about time, and I think we're talking more about how we're dealing with it. I mean, I know you weren't asking that, but it made me think about that people bring that up a lot. And obviously our installation has to do with time periods, you know, and whether we want to be or not, all have to be students of history because we are living it. And how does that affect how you create and how you live and what you pursue and what you value? And so sadly, these are relevant to very specific times, but also throughout human history and continues today. It's highly relevant as well.
As far as time in my work, three things. One is I'm trying to capture a single moment in time as the artwork that lasts then as long as the artwork lasts. The amount of time I spend doing it depends on just the medium I'm using, how long my still life will last, what length of time with what process will work best for that object or objects. So a lot of considerations on that front. And lastly, with time, it brings me back to my training, learning how to shade, like fully shaded bark plates, which is a whole process, but they're projects that take hundreds of hours to do, very small little graphite pieces that you're like, do I have to keep going? You know, it's not hundreds, but, you know, 90, 120 hours. And what it teaches you is, while you're doing it, is how to let go of the time factor and just get absorbed into what you're doing, and time just fades. And when you learn that, you learn a different mode of making art that you only, in a way, can really learn by going through that process, which is really interesting. And I don't always work that way, because a lot of mine don't take hundreds of hours, but it is an interesting thing that, and I see that a lot with my students, you know, it's the resistance to just letting yourself enter that and stay in that as long as is needed, because again, in our era, our age, that's like 90-degree or 180-degree difference in how most of us live and go through our days, and reasonably so, but there's a lot to learn from that, so yeah.
Audience, I'm curious if you have burning questions. I can always ask more, but I just want to check in and see if there's something that you personally want to know about your mom or your friend or whoever else. So this is a time if you want to put forth a question. If not, I can kind of do a final one. So.
Do you have a favorite child?
I hope there's only one.
I'm guessing there's not a lot of competition.
Okay.
Thank you for the easy one.
I'm curious, you know, these group shows are interesting because, you know, in a space like the Lowell Arts Center, you wind up with, you know, different artists who maybe have met each other for the first time in this space, or see their work next to work for the first time. So I'm curious, and we've heard a little bit about this from you, Mary Jane, but like when you guys came into the space and you saw the other works in the show, you saw each other's works, I'm curious about your first encounters and what really kind of surprised you or drew you to each other's work.
So I'll just kick it off since I'm holding the mic.
Yeah.
When we sat with Janet and she described what the show was going to be and used the word trilogy, and I did a lot of nodding, and my eyes were open. But I could not envision this. I'm like, okay, there's quilts, and then there's kind of highly, and so this is a credit to Janet's vision, which I'm always impressed with, that a curator can put together a show that works. And when I walked into the gallery, I was just amazed at how well these pieces spoke to each other, worked together, took me into very different experiences and reactions. And I think it's a magical show, and I'm so glad you understood what you were doing. Yeah, so thank you, Janet.
I remember getting this question in the email, and what went to my mind is that quilt right there behind everybody. I looked through this show, and the question on the email was what I think it was something like, what piece of art or what aspect of the other pieces, reflected back on yours, or was something that you wanted to look further into for your own work, or something like that. And,
that was part of it. Yeah.
And that one came to my mind. This one, the sunsets. Okay. This one also for compositional reasons, but that one I walked by, and at first I was like, just geometric shapes, like, just in the geometric shapes of it. It was so simplified, but I thought, no, I'm looking at each one, and I'm learning now, again, going back to what I said previously, to stop and look and reflect and think and not just consume and move on. So I stopped in front of that one, and I was looking at it, and I read the title stuff and what it was about, and I started at the top, and the sun coming down, and then half there, and then 3/4, and then the green. I wasn't even looking for the green, but I mean, as I followed it down, I was just blown away when I really looked at what I was in front of, and the fact that and on so many levels, and it just hit me. It doesn't have to hit everybody this way, but the sun, the little green sliver of the sun, and I was like, wow, they nailed it. That's it. When that disappears, I look for that in every sunset that I'm able to see. I look for that last little whisper before poof, it's gone. And then they use that for the green, and also color-wise, green, like you don't see green often. Artists, we struggle with landscape painting because you don't want the green in the sky because you're mixing your blues and your yellows, and then you don't want, and so on so many levels that hit me, because it was the idea, it was the green, it was the sunset, it was that time thing, and I thought, oh, they really, in a very, and this is a hard part of art, the simplest things can be the most impactful, and to me they nailed it in that one. And I thought, okay, am I doing that in my work? Is it, am I getting that simplicity or that depth or that, all those things? I was just asking those things. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that one and I had that in ways with other ones too, but that one really struck me. So, yeah.
I don't know, I just think they support and challenge each other, all these pieces. With support with colors, everything is full of colors, and challenging is there from different medium, how they make, it's total different. Everything, it's that's the challenging from whole of this exhibition. I love how it works with the color, and how, as you said, how the team from Lowell Arts make this possible. Yeah, that's something really amazing. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, this is fairly idiosyncratic, but in traditional quilting, yellow is seen as very problematic. people are very worried it's going to take over. And as art quilters, you're always sort of reacting in some ways to the traditional, and so we tend to rebel and think, no, I could do an entirely yellow quilt, so I could. And so the use of yellow in your paintings in particular struck me, and I thought, see, there's some more women that are not afraid of yellow. So, and it's a completely idiosyncratic thing, because I'm looking through the lens of a particular kind of quilter to say that, but I don't think painters are as afraid of yellow as traditional quilters are. But you do like to sort of that sense of a little bit acting out going on here, and it's kind of fun, and I appreciate that. And with Joy's work, that sense that we take an individual blossom in many of them, not every single one, but in many of them. And maybe the background is dark, or the background is obscured in some way. We're not seeing through to a million other leaves or something. And so we contemplate that single one, this ephemeral, beautiful, magnificently lit, sort of translucent petals, and but it's only here for a moment, and we're going to contemplate this one. Is what was striking me about it. That it's not a field of flowers; it's that one, and we don't often sort of stop and smell the one rose. We we think it's the roses, and maybe not. Yeah.
Well, that was lovely. I like the enthusiasm from everyone towards everyone. I think we've covered so much territory, and I look at my remaining questions and I'm like, we did that. We got there. So I think that this is a good stopping point. I think you guys have a lot to chew on and go home and churn on in your heads. So I just want to say thank you to the four of you for being so open and honest and fascinating about your work. So if you guys can give them a round of applause, that'd be great. And then just one more round of applause for the Lowell Arts Center for hosting all of this.
And for you, Zachary.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you allow me a shameless plug, so I am part of a group of volunteers that runs the 106 Gallery in Grand Rapids. It's sort of a scrappier, smaller version of this. And we have a 2-person exhibition in July specifically, and one of them is an art quilter. So this is just sort of nice to be in this space. So that's opening on the second Friday of July from 6 to 9. But it's very inspiring to have looked at her work on my little computer screen and then come and look at beautiful art quilts. So the 106 Gallery is that one. So, well, thank you. Yeah.